Hello, hello, hello. Okay, give a second. One quick second. Okay. Oh yeah. Sorry, I just remembered I have to do something really, really quick. Okay. Cool, cool, cool. Um, so I just need to check to see if okay. Make sure you talk about love. Conflict. Okay, got you. We're talking about love needs a little bit. Okay. Okay, let's just shift back over here. Okay, let's go with off camera. Let's go share screen. Okay, let's go over here and let's go pages. What do you know? Literally, this is my third reading tonight. Last reading, I said these exact words. I said every time I do readings, I get I get one or several things that are exactly the same in back to back to back to back to back. It never stops playing. So, of my three readings tonight, every single one has had Sun conjunct midheaven. So it's just something that's like it's just this, like a synchronistic kind of divine, whatever the fuck you want to call it. But it's just like the mathematical odds of that being, the case is so low and it just keeps happening. That explain your thing here. So anyways, um, so you got a Capricorn 29 degrees. Interesting. Conjunct midheaven in Aquarius. Not many aspects. Yeah, the Sun square Saturn. I just had or Sun square Pluto. I just had that too. And Moon square Saturn. I just hadn't really know Saturn. But yeah, so yeah, Leo in Capricorn. So that's you know, they're in quincunx signs, meaning that it's two energies that don't know a damn thing about each other. They're very, very different energies. And that's not a bad thing. Um, but you have to think about like what, from a very a priori like standpoint, like what is the goal? What's the big goal with Capricorn and what's the big goal with Leo moon? So Leo, a Capricorn sun, it's very much about I don't go into sun signs here. That's not what I'm doing over here. But Capricorn, it's very much about success. It's very much about honor on a high energy. They want to give back. They want to be doing something that's truly giving back, and they want to build. They want foundations in their life. So, um, Leo, a Leo moon is quite different, um, in that it, Leo moons I love Leo moons. My mom's Leo moon, and they have this kind of like forever young. Like I swear, no matter how old a Leo moon is, they just have this like youthful energy, um, which is like really, and just like, the high vibe Leo moons, they just have that. And it's just amazing. So yeah, I think that Leo moons also sometimes, the lower vibe Leo moons just have sometimes too much of a need for attention. Um, and the difference between this earth and this fire, this Capricorn earth, it's really, really, really like Leo is a lot less serious. So you'll have one side of you, right? Like the Leo moon, like the moon is your emotional need. So it's like you can't really live without, you can't be happy or secure without satisfying your moon sign's need, right? Um, and with Leo, it's just about being one with your inner child, right? So Capricorn can be quite cold and aloof. Um, it's a very mature sign. Sometimes it can be a little bit cold, distant, and like overly obsessed with with success and with accomplishing the goals it has. Sometimes it can be, just yeah, just too much in that area. So I think that like, yeah, some of the problem can be attributed to, not problem, but some of the potential issue can be attributed to, that potential for both sides just really wanting different things. Um and yeah, one side being, yeah, very, very, success oriented, and the other side being a lot more about just being in touch with their inner child, being in touch with that aspect of them that um you know is more more about play and more about finding, because at the essence, the true essence of Leo is authentic self-expression, right? Not everyone knows that. So, Leo, at the end of the day, it needs to feel like it's headed, it needs to feel like the high Leo. Like, I'll give you an example, like if they're a creative, right? Because Leo, it is very creative energy. They can't be creating based off of what societal standards are. Um, so aside from that, Leo is very passionate, it's very loyal a lot of times. It's very sensitive. Not everyone knows that Leo moon is very sensitive, and sometimes they, don't come off that way, but they definitely are sensitive. And a Capricorn, so this is like kind of like one of the things that might be difficult with this combo of Sun and Moon, um, is that the Capricorn part might seem, and obviously the rising is Taurus, so it kind of it squares the Leo. You have ascendant square moon, so a little bit of, so the ascendant is like, it's how you come off. It's like your outer personality, right? It's like, think of it like the vehicle through which you navigate life. So if that Taurus, so Venus rules your chart. Taurus is very fun. It's very smooth, very like, very like fun loving, very, very chill, very grounding for other people to be around, and so forth. Now Taurus is an earth sign, so is Capricorn. So your sun and your moon, or your sun and your sun, excuse me, are in a relationship that in a complementary relationship. So but then with your moon, that's where the difficulty is. And let me explain. So um basically, if you want to use the metaphor of your sun, of your ascendant being the shell, like if you're an egg, right? The egg metaphor I like to use sometimes. If you're an egg, the sun is, or the ascendant is the shell, right? The sun is the white, and the moon is the yolk, right? So not everyone sees the yolk. So the fact that you have the yolk, your more internal self, right? So the moon, not everyone sees it, right? They have to really get to know you, um, to really be able to experience that. Um, that can be difficult, right? That can be difficult to have it not really line up in that way. Um, and what can happen is that, the Leo and Taurus are very different, right? Leo's way more social. Leo is brave, courageous, heart of the lion. It's fun. It's gregarious. It loves being around people. Loves kids. Um, so when you have that type of energy, what can happen like in relationships and stuff is that you might meet someone, or just friendships in general, and you might feel very misunderstood because they might see that Taurus and that Capricorn and think that you're just very, very, not that you're not solid. I'm just using words to kind of paint a picture, right? Um, but they might they might not see this like very fiery side. Now, of course, this is more difficult if like the person has like a water moon and like fire, ascendant and fire sun, because then they're just like way more sensitive and people can't see the sensitivity. But in your position, it's more about, like just the fact that fire is just a lot, it's more sensitive, but I mean Earth can be sensitive, but it's just like a lot more active. So you might come off less active than you really are. You might come off less, like you're less like, because Leo moons are very competitive too. And they like they're a lot more fun. That's what it is, right? So people, like, I don't know if this has ever happened to you, but I wouldn't be surprised um, if people have met you and then like, oh, oh, they met you and then like, they get to know you, and then all of a sudden they're like, wow, you're so much more like active, or you're so much more like passionate than I expected, or than I thought at first. I thought you were just like a really like not boring. That's not the word I'm looking. That's not what I'm trying to say. Way more like introverted, or way more like laid back, but you're actually like really, really like kind of fiery and you know. So I think from fire to earth isn't um it isn't like, it's not one of the bad ones. Or it's not one of the ones that's that difficult, but it's more difficult when it goes from the other one to the other one, from like, yeah, from fire to water. Definitely way more difficult. So, when we connect it all, um having the moon, the fourth house, the sun in the ninth house, and the sun is on the midheaven, that creates someone who has a massive emotional connection to their career, right? Or not emotional. Sorry, that's not what I meant to say. I meant to say they have a massive, just like life purpose is very, linked to the career. Um, so that's important to know. Um, a lot of times, and I just said this last reading, but like it's not like a science, but a lot of times the father is very influential. Um, but I've also like tested that theory out a number of times where it's been incorrect. Um, but I also have tested that out a number of times where the person did have like a significantly very successful parent or father. Um, but I think what I've really found about that one is that the father plays like a massive role into the child's development, into their career development. Um, with it being a 29-degree Capricorn sun, though, there would be a lot of setbacks in the first 30 years. So that's, that's definitely a real a real commonality there. Now, this energy, with this energy in this house, with the moon in this fourth house, that will make one very connected to their family, to their parents. Um, it'll be very important for them to forge a spiritual relationship with themselves throughout their life. That's really important. And yeah, yeah, like a fourth house moon, even in the fire sign, definitely wants to find their, find themselves. Even if they, whether they become a big traveler or not, they want to find themselves. How do you say it? They want to find themselves in the sense that um, when they're traveling or when they're like on their expeditions of life, when they're in their passions, like because I was talking about like the importance of like um of creative self-expression, that real authentic creative self-expression, how important that is. So in this sense, it turbocharges that, right? It turbocharges that. And um it makes it so important for that person to, build a solid family, family or home or whatever it is, within themselves. Now, for the more challenging aspect, right? I mentioned the Pluto and the Saturn. So, with the moon squaring Saturn, it's very common to have, as a Leo moon, right? There's this big desire, this big need, more than desire, to feel very, very, to feel like they can just let go and just have fun, like that's like literally the moon sign. Like I said before, people with Leo moons, they, they want to feel like they're forever, like they feel like they're forever young. But when you have the Saturn square, right? A lot of times the family was more strict. The mother could have been more strict. The early nurturing, could have been more strict. Now, this has nothing to do with love, right? This has nothing to do with you know, with love, but sometimes it's like there can be like a perfectionism in the family, or like something like that. can lead the person to not having had their emotional needs met growing up, right? And that can be challenging, very challenging. That's why Saturn, hard aspects from Saturn to the moon, Saturn can be very melancholic, right? So for the first, till the Saturn return, a lot of times the person can feel very held back when it comes to their ability to be vulnerable. Um, Now on that, um, it makes it so they have to have almost like superhuman efforts um, when it comes to vulnerability, right? Um, which isn't easy. And you know, there can be depression, melancholy, because like at the end of the day, what you want, what we want most is happiness, and we want like the love life stuff, right? I know that was a focus. Um, there's that desire to really be in tune. Like there's that desire, to want their love life to be a certain way. Um, but there can be lots of restrictions getting there. In 1 second, hold on. All right, I'm back. Share screen. So yeah, so that typically um yeah, the moon there, it's a difficult position to have. But with Saturn and the moon, everything gets better after the Saturn return, and gets better with age. And when you think of the high, like, because every hard aspect in astrology, right? It's meant to turn hard aspects, as I quoted my quote, um, are meant to be turned into assets, right? Aspects are meant to be turned into assets. Um, so you know, people, it's like a metaphor of like, people who have like only like easy like trines and sextiles in their chart. They don't have any hard aspects. It's like they might get complacent. So there's not really anything that's good or bad in astrology. That's a big misconception, right? Like people are like, oh my God, I have this aspect. I'm screwed. No, you're not screwed. It's like, there's a purpose to everything, right? There's a purpose to that, because it's about growth. We come here as humans in this incarnation, every incarnation, to grow. And me as the karmic astrologer, I'm trying to stop yelling at me. I'm trying to explain like what that is, right? So when it with respect to love, it's very much about um, vulnerability, and like really pushing yourself to be someone who can be vulnerable, who can move past, what might be very, very difficult at one time. And the best way to do that is to just put yourself out there and just get good when it comes to opening up. It's like jumping off a cliff into water. It's not for like skydiving or something, like I'm not someone who's ever going to skydive, but just a metaphor that the first time you do it, apparently, obviously it's very nerve-wracking, but it gets easier in time. It gets easier after that, or jumping off a cliff into water, it gets easier. So then the other really tough one is the sun and Pluto, right? Because that is like the ultimate potential for someone who some like it's not easy to know exactly like what what the direct manifestation was in terms of what happened. But, typically the theme is around, um, the theme is around surrender, right? And what can happen with people who have that aspect is that they can sometimes they can sometimes feel like, because of like, whatever their potential like early relationship was with parents or just the upbringing in general, they can sometimes feel like disempowered. And there can be this big theme of, because a lot of times with hard aspects from Pluto, and then Saturn too, like the Saturn one it really, really makes that early relationship very important with the parents. And, you know, a lot of like these hard aspects to the moon, more notably Neptune, but I've seen it work out with like, most of the outer planet ones, is that, um, you know, you really have to like think about like what's yours and what's not yours, right? So like in this respect, it could be, um, you know, for example, like taking on some type of like sadness or shame that doesn't actually belong to you, right? Um, so there's like a big jump in awareness when that individual learns like, oh, that's not mine. That's my mom's. That's my mom. Like that's my mom's shame. That's the shame that runs in the bloodline. And just being able to separate yourself from that. It's like, with the quincunx of sun and moon, like elementally, um, oftentimes there's a theme where it's like, you are not meant to be, you're meant to blaze your own path, in life. You're not meant to just like follow mom or follow dad. It's really meant to be you. And um, so the tough thing with the Pluto is this. It's that people, when it doesn't get integrated, right? People can feel as though like they need to like control. So like in relationships, it can make relationships like this, like almost like this battleground, because there can be like a fear of abandonment. And that's one thing also with the Saturn, um, and moon, is that people with that, sometimes they can feel like they're unlovable early on, right? And like I said before, it can make it difficult for them to like be vulnerable and to show their true self when it comes to love. So it's this life journey of just owning, like just like really, really owning your authentic self, and just being very, very like really like self-acceptance is the word, self-acceptance and self-love, regardless of like, how how other people that you know like other people's expectations of you, right? Because that's very common when I see these types of aspects. A lot of times when we have the follow-up, the clients will tell me like, yeah, like my parents wanted me to be a lawyer. They wanted me to family follow like a family, something, like a profession, or like, like a lot of like, sometimes it's like, you know like the amount of love and the amount of recognition they received growing up is not linked to them as a human being and to, how amazing they are as a human. It can be more linked to, um, like what they accomplish, or like the grades they have, or how well they're doing in their career. So oftentimes, with that, and then of course if like there was kind of like a conditional type of like not love, but just like acceptance, it's like if that is something that exists in that family, it can be very, very tough. And the life journey can be very, very based on just coming to terms with, who they are, their authentic self, right? Which is the core of Leo. So when I talk about Leo in the sense of like authentic self and inner child, right? Um, like what I mean by that is the need to really, really just be you, like to really, really just like find who you are and unapologetically just be that person. Um, so yeah, that's kind of how that gets integrated. But what can happen in relationships is that it can mimic the parents' relationship. Um, and the big key word is surrender. It's surrender, right? When it comes to Pluto square Sun, because yeah, like I said, there can be a lot. There can be like this feeling that um, like there can be like there like a lot of times with Pluto square Sun, there's some level of power struggle. There's some level of yeah, of power struggle and of some kind of like dark energy that exists um in the family culture. And the person can go between like feeling very powerful and powerless, and then sometimes also they can become control freaks. I'm not saying that that's how you are. I'm just saying that's like you know that's just something that's common with that, right? So at the end of the day, Pluto is the highest evolutionary. It represents like the highest evolutionary jump, into one's like away from one's like comfort zone and into shadow work. So for people who are really on that fast track in life, you know, to really like, because Pluto represents death, rebirth, transformation, right? So when you have it square your sun, there's things that happen in life that push one into a necessity to transform, right? Some aspect of themselves or some aspect they have to like learn to rise above this need for control. And and if it doesn't manifest that way, it sure can manifest um as yeah, in relationships, um becoming like almost like the war zone, not war zone, but like becoming like the area of life where a lot of like the shadow from potentially the early relationships can come out. So when I talk about surrender, right, I talk about the need to truthfully look at oneself and like to have self-compassion for themselves, right? And to move out, to really be honest about, what am I on a psychological doing, on a psychological level, like what am I doing or not doing that um represents this power struggle, that represents this need. Because one of the things about Pluto on a very deep level, I did some research and wrote an article about this recently, or somewhat recently. I haven't been posting much, but it represents, like Pluto can represent our cocoon, right? It can represent like what we know. And like, for example, like kind of more extreme example, it could be like the child who grew up with parents who are always fighting or something like that, and then their idea of love is linked to that, right? It's linked to that. So then when they get into healthy relationships, it kind of freaks them out until that healing has been completed, right? So when I see Pluto square sun, Pluto square moon, my instant reaction is nearly always like, especially with my clients, because it's such a tendency for clients I get. Because when you book with me, I think intuitively, or whether it's conscious or not, you know, there's other astrologers that are going to tell you what you want to hear, right? And for me, I want to really give the raw truth, but I don't only want to give that raw truth with no solution. That would just be like, that's just like not good. And everything also in astrology, and that's why the follow up and the current astrology reading after that is so important. Um, it is really about astrology in its core, the way I do it. It is the interplay of the interplay of your free will and and the chart. So that's like kind of the square with Pluto there. Now also the sun is square Mars. So sun square Mars is different. Sun square Mars is more just like when I see that with people, I'm like, it's very, very important for you to have some type of outlet, some type of outlet that um is create in this case like physical, like working out, something that like really gets that energy out. Because with Mars square sun, it sometimes can have like anger issues. And with Mars and Scorpio conjunct Pluto, like, which is a very powerful placement, by the way. So you're not a Scorpio, obviously, but when you have Scorpio Mars, it can make you feel very scorpionic because it's in its dignity position. And what that means, Scorpio Mars people, they are spiritual warriors, through and through, they're spiritual warriors. And they, you know, especially when it's conjunct Pluto, like they know exactly what to say. That it can almost be scary, right? Because they know exactly like when they're like in a lower vibe, or like they know exactly how to hurt someone on like a psychological level. Whether it's something that comes out or not, they know. So the fact that, and this goes exactly with what I was saying, I didn't even see this part of the chart before I said it, but um like it's in the seventh house, right? It's in, so it's really saying that your relationships, your partner, your love relationships, like the unconscious reactions that you would have there would be an exact um transference, and it gives you all the clues as to the healing that's needed. So imagine like you have these aspects with your moon, your sun, right? So it's obviously speaking of like, early life stuff that needs to be resolved, which, your past or Saturn return. So you could have easily like, made a lot of ground in that area. But, with the Pluto energy, I've seen this so much, it can just create, you know, relationships that are battlefields. And then when you're a Scorpio Mars, yeah, I mean, there's really amazing parts of Scorpio Mars. Like it gives one like this real ability um to be able to like probe deep into like the esoteric and the human psychology and all these different areas. But then on the flip side, you know, the fact and the fact that's conjunct Pluto gives you this like, you know, you're the type of person like definitely the type of person who when you like get into something, you know, like let's say it's like just random example doing astrology right now. Let's say you like really, really were into astrology, right? Like you just like one day you were just like, this is what I want to study, this is what I want to learn. Let's go. Like someone with that position, with that combination of Pluto and Mars and Scorpio, they can go probe so deep into like these very intense areas, but also on a psychological level, it makes them very so it's like very, very good. It's like an it's like it's like almost like an obsessive energy, right? Not in a bad way. Well, okay, I'll explain. Because like in love, it can make it just makes one want to have like the deepest form of love, you know? So for some people, and you know, with that being in the seventh, it could very well make someone kind of feel like um you know, very like very, very quickly they can become very like fall very, very fast, you know, and like in love and infatuation and whatnot. And then you have your Venus around my moon, nice. In Sag. So that could speak to like, you know, like I feel like nearly like most people I know that have a Sag Venus, including my girlfriend, and she's Romanian, I'm French. Um, you know, she has every boyfriend she's ever had has been foreign for the most part, right? And it's not like any like gold digger type energy. It's just that people with you know, this position, they you know, they really want to either have someone that's from a different culture. Also, like Venus and Sag people love to travel. Like I've never met one that just doesn't love foreign cultures, and sometimes they even want to move to a place that's different because at the end of the day, like what they value is truth, right? And I always talk about how, you know, one's dharma, right? Like what like I don't like to call it career because not everyone has like a traditional career like that, but what one's meant to do on like an outer life level, right, is very much um is very much linked, and this goes for everyone, it's very much linked to their truth, right? So like the people with Sag energy, they'll go far and beyond to find their truth. So, and your Venus is conjunct South Node, which makes it so your relationships in this lifetime, like your important relationships, will be super, super fated, like super karmic, super based on like past life karma that you're meant to, um, you know, get right with certain people. You know, you're meant to, so like everything in that department will be, I guess what you could say, very fated. So, and then the fact that Uranus is involved too makes it so there's a lot of things. And I see so much like esoteric, occult, spiritual potential in your chart, just FYI. But you know, with Uranus involved conjunct the South Node in Sag, right? One thing that on a karmic level that you're trying to assimilate is the higher and the lower mind, but I'll get to that in a little bit because we're talking about love here. Um, you know, so one, you know, you either want someone from like a different culture or someone who can really, really, really add to your worldview. So someone who on like a philosophical level, you can have like these really like deep conversations that expand you, right? That's massive. Now, on the flip side, right, the fact that Uranus is there, I think that's very exciting, right? Because when you have this position, right, when you have like a Sag Venus, you with Uranus, conjunct, things can just like it creates like a very like just exciting, like full of surprises type love life, right? Um, things can just happen like out of nowhere, and you're just like, what? Like, what just happened? Um, and these things are meant to really take you to that next level. They're meant to take you to that next level of comprehension, um, in terms of the bigger picture. Because going back to your Dharma really quick, I always give this example. Like if you have two people, one person who's super, super, like believes everything the mainstream media is saying, everything they learn in school, they never really question anything. Um, they're going to be way different than someone who is not like that. Someone who's spiritual and someone who's always questioning everything, right? And that's one of the beautiful things of that Mars conjunct Pluto, just in a place on its own. One thing about Mars and Scorpio is that you can never pull these people down. Like they are so tough. They're spiritual warriors. They will always get back up. And you can never kill a Scorpio, as they say, right? But like with the fact that Mars, um, you know, Mars and Pluto is square Sun, it means that a lot of your like those like initial unconscious reactions that could come out in your relationships, yeah, like I said before, those are the clues to the healing that needs to happen, right? Those are the clues. Now, to kind of like think about, so there's a split, right? A psychological split here in the love life kind of energy, because you see here, turn my camera on for a second. There I am. So, you know, having all this together, and then Saturn's not far away. Um, there's so many lessons in the love life, and because it's the Scorpio ruling the seventh house, so the split is that on one side, right, there's this like Scorpio, which is like very, very like the love language for Scorpio is like two souls becoming one, complete unification, like the deepest kind of soulmate type energy, right? Now, what can be frustrating is that Saturn is also on in the seventh house on the descendant. And people who have that, usually it takes until like their Saturn return, after the first 30 years to really get things right. And a lot of times if they get married before that, right? Um, it makes it so when, 30, 29, those years come, it's really, really difficult, right? Um, because that means that Saturn is transiting over the seventh house. But so that's one part of the split, is like that potential for like, you know, if you, yeah, like the war zone, I guess you could say, like where shit goes down, where you meet your shadow is in relationships and partnerships. Um, and then there's this thing like with the square of Pluto, the potential for like, if there are fears linked to abandonment, or there's fears linked to like the Saturn Moon thing, like potentially for feeling unlovable. Saturn Moon also, yeah, there can be like, melancholy, depression, all that stuff, right? Um, self-victimization, like things around that. So that's one side, right? That's very deep and very, very, very emotional. But then on the other side, and then you have to factor in the Leo moon too, right? Leo moon, they need a certain level of attention, right? So in love, they need to feel very honored. They need to feel like they are, really, really being seen and being honored, and they really want to. It's not like they're like people get it twisted about Leo, thinking that they're like attention whores and they need like to, always be getting compliments and all that. No, they really require a high level of love because they're very loyal. You're very loyal with that. In the Scorpio, Mars makes that even more so. Um, and one thing about that too is that because Mars is with Pluto, it's going to give you Mars as your action it's the assertiveness action function, right? So when it's conjunct Pluto, it is a direct line for you to go deep, for you to have relationships, right? And like I said, probably the early ones are probably difficult. Um, that then jumps you into this real transformation. So being able to look at relationships in that way, right? Not looking at it from a sense of like victim, uh, anything like that, but looking at them through learning experiences, that's the key. Now, let me go to the other end of the split. And I can go like this. So you see here, that's the Scorpio energy, but then the Sag energy, this is all about freedom, right? So Sag, Venus. So even though there's a lot of other energy that's very much about closeness and that kind of soulmate twin flame type energy, if you want, for lack of a better term, um, there's this other energy, right? That like with Uranus and Venus in the South Node, I already mentioned the karmic aspect, but allergies. Um, there's another aspect to it where with Uranus, there's this big need for freedom, right? There's this massive need for freedom. And so I'm curious like how that plays out for you, because what can happen is that there can be one part that wants to get fully immersed, like fully just like really, really close. But then with the Uranus, there can be an energy where, you're wanting more space in your relationships. You're wanting to, um, because like, and I'll talk about your North Node journey in a second, but, you can't, you know, like there needs to be a balance between, um, like the extreme of like the seventh house, which is like Libra, which is like, codependency. Like I can't live without my partner. I can't, like it has to be like this, right? It needs to be, just like codependency, right? Where you're not happy unless like addicted to love type energy. A balance between that's one extreme. And then Aries, that extreme is like, I'm not willing to compromise for anyone. Like it has to be my way or the highway. So that in itself, you know, Sag, Venus, they, like I said, like they always want to be learning, but sometimes there can be an energy, especially when we have Neptune conjunct Venus, right? And Jupiter. Well, the Jupiter one's amazing, and the Neptune one's not necessarily bad, but the thing about Neptune, um, and Venus is that it can create over idealization, right? So like rose-colored glasses, right? Like you meet someone, potentially you have to move slow in relationships, right? Because with Neptune and Venus, even though like that combination from a different perspective is like very like one of the best for creativity, right? And if you're not a creative person or someone who creates, just having like this amazing sensitivity to art, anything creative, right? That's like the mix of imagination, inspiration, Neptune. Like if you think of the Starry Night Van Gogh painting, I always use that one for example. You have to have the inspiration from Neptune to have that idea to do it, and then Venus is like the actual like application of the painting that can be applied to anything. and it just gives a deep sensitivity in that area. But in love, what can happen is it's super romantic energy, right? Super, super romantic. But there's the potential for allowing the wrong type in. And when that Pluto energy is not, when you haven't done that, if you haven't done the shadow work about like really looking at yourself and like asking yourself, okay, in these relationships, what was my role? What was my role? Because some people with with these types of energies, they'll always shift the blame, right? I'm not saying you're doing that, but that can be a potential, right? Where they're shifting, they're not willing to look at their role in it, even if the other person was horrible and all that. For example, they're still the part of like potentially not having moved too fast, and whatnot. So a lot of things in your chart are speaking to like the first 30 years being a very, very, very like faded, and after the Saturn return, a lot more freedom coming, right? And with the Saturn in the seventh, like I said, there's that high probability that these, that the first 30 years in love were a big learning experience and not easy. So yeah, that's kind of the split, I guess you could say, is like between like that real closeness, um, right? That real close, like romantic closeness, and then that need, which with Uranus and Venus sometimes, and then Neptune on the other, one can be disillusionment over idealization. The other one is Uranus, can be more along the lines of, okay, now I'm with this person, but now I don't like this too clingy. I don't want things too clingy. Um, so what it comes down to is learning to value yourself, right? Learning to value you, which is why you have a Leo moon, because the best thing you can do with a Leo moon is to dive into your own creativity, even if it's like writing poems that you never show anyone, for example, uh, or filming yourself, right? Because you have Neptune with Venus, so you can learn a lot if you just like, because Neptune rules cameras or mirrors, and you can like film yourself just talking. You don't have to show anyone, like a daily like vlog, like you're some YouTuber or something. And you can learn a lot through that. You can learn a lot through writing, through journaling. But at the end of the day, there's a need to take things slow. I always tell people who have this to, have like a friend that's very like objective. That's going to tell you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. And yeah, like genuinely, just like really taking things slow and just understanding that there could be that. So when we talk about like the perfect partner, it's someone who gives you all these things, right? Who you're able to have that deep connection with, but then you're also able to have your own life, to not get too fully embedded in that person where you need them. So when we talk about the North Node, right? The North Node in astrology represents the journey you're trying to take, right? It represents like you, the mountain that has not been climbed in past lives, right? So to have it in Gemini, um, that's all about learning to see life from other people's point of view, right? And becoming really good at communication, the base level communication. And with the Neptune Venus, there can be issues with boundaries, right? Now, um, the fact that, you know, it's in the second house, that speaks to really having to go inside yourself and find these internal values and morals. And then those become, okay, I just lost my hotspot for a second. It's back. Yeah, so like that can become a need for like very strong boundaries, right? And it comes down to self-esteem, right? And your Chiron's in Taurus. So many of my clients have that. Um, and it's rising. So, that can be difficult because sometimes people who have that, they can like they're meant, like they are healers, right? And you have so much in your chart that's so good for spirituality. It's amazing. But Chiron rising sometimes can have an energy where you can, people with that sometimes can hold their woundedness, like in their face, or like in their kind of overall like demeanor, right? And they sometimes feel like every time they express their essential being, they get some kind of rejection, especially early on, right? And then there's this whole exploration with Chiron and Taurus that comes down to that very thing I was talking about, that crisis of values, right? Which can come through a lack of self-worth, and sometimes people try to overcompensate with like material, doing good in the material world, accruing like lots of money, possessions, all that. And it's also related to the body. So things like yoga can be really, really valuable, meditation, working out, whatever it is, anything that makes you feel very beautiful and very embodied in yourself, right? Where you can then rely on your body to tell you if something's right and if something's not right. But yeah, so it's like really like about self-worth at the end of the day. But with the North Node in Gemini, so sometimes people who have South Node in Aquarius, in Sag, they can be a little bit restless, scattered. Sometimes they they need to do some of the groundwork when it comes to their belief systems, and just learn to really communicate at like that level, that base level, Um, like they can be really, really good in like the highest form of communication, but then when it comes to, the more easy stuff, it can be difficult. So yeah. But then you have like really good aspects to your Mercury. So Mercury, obviously your mind, your communication, your brain, all that stuff. Um, to have that in Capricorn, conjunct Jupiter and um Neptune, you're able to be a channel, literally. Like you can be a channel. You can sit, and if you're meditating, for example, like you can just get these downloads. And because it's in your ninth house, your Mercury in the ninth house means that you're not, especially with your Mars Pluto conjunction, you're not someone who's like very like you're way more into the deep parts of life. Um, and with Jupiter on Mercury, people with that, they're able to really, they have this thirst for knowledge and for wisdom. um it's very good for intelligence, it's very good for seeing the big picture, and it gives people like big ideas, big plans, and actually it has a nice impact on the mind, because they can kind of like plug into this deeper wisdom and deeper philosophy, to see the big picture. So yeah, like I said, yeah, this inner well, like during tough times, this inner well of optimism that they can always rely on during those tough times, to kind of like see like what's the learning here. Um, Mercury with Neptune is so amazing. Like you just are able to like really have this like amazing imagination, right? And the fact that these are in the ninth house. But also one thing about the Mercury Neptune is that sometimes people with that can be, they can have almost like an osmosis where like they take on a lot of thoughts of people around them. So it's very important to have alone time. If you're like around a lot of people, sometimes the environment, the people you surround yourself with, is so important. Because you can be very, very sensitive to the thoughts and ideas of other people. So yeah. And Um, so yeah, those three together, that's that little mini stellium there, I think is just giving like a very creative and imaginative part of your mind, right? Where you can just like think of these incredible ideas. and then also this real broad-mindedness to be able to see. It's like you're on top of a mountain. You're able to really, really see everything. And then Neptune in the ninth by itself and Jupiter in the ninth by itself, like Neptune in the ninth will give like someone who's like always looking for like the perfect philosophy, and it's more of like a spiritual. So if they had religion pushed on them, a lot of times I see this, um, they're not gonna go for something that's just pushed on them, right? They want to explore more. And Jupiter in the ninth house, that's exactly where you want it. Jupiter in Capricorn, very good for money. And here's Esme, and this is my third reading, and she's going to do her thing. Esme, what's the thing I need to look at in the chart? Esme, no, you didn't do it. Esme, what's the thing I need to look at in the chart? Look, open your eyes, Esme. Okay, I need to pet her for a little bit. Pet her, pet the head, pet the head, pet the head. Okay, Esme, can you help me? Oh, let me move this. Oh, you meowed at the midheaven. Well, I was going to talk about that, Missy. So, yeah. So yeah, anything that happened like the first 30 years around relationships, just think of it as a lesson. Whatever happened was meant to happen. And if you got married before and there's like a divorce or something, like that's so common with people who have seventh house Saturns. But it gets way easier. Seventh house Saturn, once you learn those lessons in love, and you're able to like not have any projection onto the partner from stuff that came from the childhood, then it Saturn seventh house, it makes someone who is, especially Pluto there, you know so many of the life lessons are in relationship, and the Mars in the seventh house, it pushes one towards relationships. It makes one very, very actively seeking relationships, right? There's like a big drive for intimate relationships, but also, like I said, there's that drive there, but then there's that desire to be independent when they're in them. And with Scorpio, of course, there can be like a large level of drama. And one thing about Mars and Scorpio is that they are the last person you want to be your enemy. So yeah. And like, but like there's another a part about the temper, right? And that's why I talk about like the need to have like a physical outlet where you're sweating shit out, because you know like that can be one of the most volcanic aspects, Mars with Pluto, because things can really boil up from the unconscious, and when it's in the seventh house of relationships, that and you have Sun squaring that energy too, a lot of very deep unconscious stuff can come out just like that. So it makes mindfulness really important, and groundedness. So leaning into your Capricorn, right, your sun sign, 29 degrees, that's the last degree. So that's a critical degree, analytic degree. And what that refers to is that it's almost like a master number, in the sense that like, and it's a cusp. So with sun signs, I look at cusps for some reason. I just, the only one that I've really like observed them. There can be parts of you that feel more Capricorn, parts of you that feel more Aquarius, because it's the last degree, but also it's like you're here to really master this high Capricorn energy, right? Which is like, the highest energy of Capricorn is honor, right? It's like doing things, really, really being fully engaged in your dharma. And the fact that it's on your midheaven means that your life's work is extremely important. That's a really, really good one for success. Have your sun on the midheaven, like that's someone who is a real powerful person, real force to be reckoned with in their chosen career, profession, or whatever. And like I said, your midheaven is in Aquarius, so that could lead to some type of career that's like more, not eccentric, but just like really based on your true self. And because it's in a air sign, there can be a change in career. But overall, most people with midheaven in Aquarius, they really want to have some, like, do something that's very ingenious, that's very kind of like unconventional, and that makes a real contribution to career. And like I said, they can change careers throughout their life, and even have more than one potentially. Like they can have like the passion that might not be making money right away, paying the bills, and then the money maker. And then eventually the goal is for the passion to become the money maker. So with that Capricorn energy in the ninth, and just the sun, like you're able to, like, once you really like figure out what that passion is, what really lights your fire on an authentic level, you're able to really have that slow and steady like growth over time. That's like such a good thing about Capricorn. And because it's 29 degrees, once again, your first until your Saturn return was probably full of setbacks and struggles, but now you're probably in a position where you're really, seen as a very responsible person and someone who isn't like, the setbacks aren't there anymore as much as they were before. And it's like, like you were really tested in the first 30 years, and then it's like 3 steps forward, then 4 steps back, and then 4 steps forward, and then 2 steps back. It's like this. And then after the Saturn return, you're left with that same grit and determination that you needed to succeed in that with those with that tendency for things to kind of happen like that. You keep that determination, you keep that grit, and you can become very, very successful. You become very successful usually. People have that. Now, one more thing about love is that your Juno, which represents like the ideal partner, it's Juno, maybe the 12th house in Placidus. So first house in pole sign. So that speaks to like really, really needing someone like your ideal partner that really is secure and grounding, and that you can really, it's like a big boulder rock, someone that you just is so reliable, and that you can depend on. They're not just going to switch up, and that they can be patient, and that they can really, really help work through like some of that moon square Saturn stuff, right? So yeah, because there can be lots of insecurities and stuff like with self-esteem around that, right? So it's all, this is all an internal thing, about like learning to value yourself. And then like, that also speaks to like the karmic and like the past life kind of connection, when it comes to your most important relationships and how fated they'll be. So with some of the esoteric stuff, so having Uranus in the eighth is amazing because it makes one fascinated with metaphysics and anything that probes one deeper into the meaning of life and human psychology. And as a Scorpio Mars, you'll be very fascinated in that too. You can make a great counselor, psychologist. Like even if that's not your job, you'll be naturally good at that. Probably the person that your friends come to when they need counsel. And it just gives like the ability to just receive downloads, to receive like just like information. Like, where the hell did I just think of that? Where did that come from? Right. So it's brilliant. And speaking of brilliant, you have Pallas in Aquarius, right? Which so many of my clients do, because that just gives like a brilliant mind, that's ahead of their time, that can grasp ideas fast and apply them well to the future, and really be like fueled by like very humanitarian causes. And it makes a very good strategist, and it's in the 10th house, so it makes one very wise when it comes to their career. Someone who can really like know the steps that it takes to get to where they want, and use their creative talents in their career in the best way possible. So, and then of course Venus conjunct Jupiter, one of the best aspects in astrology. That just makes someone who's very, usually very popular. Who knows how to have fun, the Leo moon, that's the inner child. So like another thing with love is like, you can't be with someone too serious. You want someone with the Sag Venus and the Leo moon who can be your adventure buddy, who, you can like allow your inner child to come out with. And I think that is the biggest healing, right? Um, to have that level of trust. I think that's definitely a necessity, right? And yeah, it's like the Venus and Jupiter like loving to like kind of share adventures and sharing philosophy, sharing goals. It's very, very good for being like a teacher, someone that can inspire people. But there is one thing you have to watch out to not become overly indulgent or extravagant in different things. Like fun is great and all that, and it's a big part of the energy here, but there's that balance. There's definitely that balance between creativity, fun, and really just fulfilling your dharma. So what's up, Esme? You want to show me something else? Series? Okay, interesting. Well, she looked at Black and Lilith in series, so I was going to talk about that anyways. um So yeah, Black Moon Lilith and Pisces. So think about that as like we all have this. It's not a planet. It's just speaking to like us at our worst, I guess you could say, like when we're at our lowest vibration. So in Pisces, it could be the tendency to kind of shut down from emotions, and to kind of live in like a kind of fantasy world and want to escape reality and not really like deal with it. So, the best way forward with that is with Black Moon and Pisces is to really learn the difference between imagination and intuition. And with your series there, in the 11th, right? And then also Black Moon in the 11th can make uh it can speak to like friendships and issues there. And also potentially like giving up on your goal, like your larger goals, like just don't give up. um But yeah, Sirius in 11th is kind of a different energy than that because it makes you like the nurturer within your groups of friends, like I was talking about. And you like to feel loved and protected by your friends, and really safe in the Pisces 11th house. So like a very deep kind of spiritual, compassionate, being parts of groups and friend groups and just groups in general that have that kind of real compassionate energy, that helps you feel like that oneness with all that is, right? And yeah. So I think with the Black Moon Lilith, it can be an energy where sometimes you have to watch out for not like there can be a potential for like feeling like you're giving, giving, giving and not receiving. So it's like really like to have boundaries in that area as well. And then you have Vesta and Gemini in the second. That definitely creates like a commitment to those. It's with your North Node, so it's like creating like that real commitment um when it comes to your values, right? um Now one thing that's interesting is that Uranus on the South Node could also speak to someone who might have a fear of branching out and being different, because potentially in past lives, they're good. Like it can sometimes create more with the square, but with the conjunction it could definitely make you have like kind of karmic fears of being misrepresented, karmic fears of being ostracized and left out for when you're being yourself, right? But then the fact that the part of fortune is right there on Uranus is showing that you at your best, in Sagittarius, well, for one, when you're living life to the fullest, when you're being an adventurer, when you're traveling, when you're, with your sun in the ninth house, traveling, philosophy, and truth is like such a massive part of your purpose, right? And then that truth that you find, as I was saying earlier with my example, the person that's really, really into like the conditioned, world, and the person that's really, really into like um, you know, thinking critically and having their own opinions and into spirituality and all types of things, they're going to have a very different idea of what's important for them to do for a living. See what I'm saying? So that's really, really big. But yeah, the part of fortune, you know, there, it's really about, the greatest joy comes when you're going through that surrender and when you're surrendering to the universe and when you're um basically surrendering the ego and willing to learn from others, right? Because sometimes the South Node and Sag can be a little bit dogmatic with their philosophies and have too much of like an intellectual or too much of a put too much of their ego sometimes into their philosophies. So it's about being able to separate yourself from the things you believe in because that's not you, you know? Um, but yeah, the fact that it's conjunct Uranus to me is just showing how you're, like you at your best is when you're truly being your eccentric you, and blazing your own path, as I was saying before. Now, the more you meditate, the more you journal, the more you get into that real like spiritual side, that's like one of the biggest cures for this chart. Like it's all over the place in that respect. Um, and then of course being, a Taurus rising on its own makes Venus rule your chart. So, that Taurus risings are just very, they're very good at having a very like laid back attitude. And I told you how with the square to the moon, how it can be difficult, but like I think Taurus rising, it just it's a nice rising sign, right? And it makes one really want to incorporate beauty into their life and incorporate kind of a very laid back kind of chill energy. Of course, Taurus rising, sometimes they have to learn to be more assertive and they have to learn to take risks, which is a huge part of your chart, right? With the Sag energy and the Scorpio energy, right? These two signs, Scorpio is about taking risks with respect to going within yourself and letting go of what's no longer serving you, people, places, tendencies, whatever. And then Sag is about going out in the world, traveling, taking the physical risks, new teachers, new philosophies, all that stuff. So, and then the Sun trying Chiron, it gives you this real ability to be a healer and to know, what to be able to really heal people through, being very empathetic because of the things you've gone through, just being able to like really listen to other people and help them understand their own pain. That's like a very like Sun trine Chiron nearly exact is just like both amazing healing talents, right? It's all about like digging deep into yourself and figuring out how to implement those in your life. I have no doubt that you'd be so good at anything related to healing and you take so much out of it because your vertex is in the sixth, which means that like it's in Libra. So it's like, you know, your doorway to higher awareness is through being of service to humanity, right? And then also through having very peaceful, fair, balanced relationships, right? Where there's not these battles, where it's, the high principles, good communication, right? But yeah, the Pluto square in the Saturn, um, the Pluto square and the Saturn square are really like what needs to kind of get past. I know you said that you wanted potentially to get a compatibility reading, so you just gotta let me know about that, because those are a whole, that's like a whole different arena, right? Whole different arena. Okay, let's pull this up. Where'd it go? Why just disappear? But yeah, I think even like Jupiter with Neptune can just give someone like this amazing um talent for music and arts, creativity. But there's that need to develop that self-discipline, right? Um, and same thing with spirituality, right? It makes one really want to like, it gives one like this real lantern of light into areas that are dark and unknown to other people. So that's really nice. The nodes don't have squares. Let me just double check that. 13. Yeah, there's nothing there. Okay. Oh yeah, one other thing about Vesta and Gemini, typically they're people who are quite good when it comes to like networking and writing and communicating with respect to work. Um, and it's very good for writing. Very, very good for writing. So yeah, one thing I just love about the Leo moon is like when life gets tough. So like the Capricorn, like I said, it can be a little bit cold. It can be a little bit, melancholic sometimes. But the Leo side is just not like that at all. So it's like feeding both mouths is like feeding that Capricornian need for that success and for that honor and achievement. And then Leo, it's like all about fun. So it's like, how do you balance those two? Um, so I think like any kind of career or even just like, you know, just having like outlets is huge. Okay, let me click out of this real quick. Hold on. Okay, let's pull this up. Where did it go? No. So yeah, lots of stuff. So with your follow-up, basically like what nearly everyone does is that they add the current astrology. Um, so you already have the follow-up. It's an hour where we will meet and we'll talk about all of this, just the natal chart, right? You get the natal chart done once in your life, or from different astrologers if you like, but it doesn't change. It's all probabilities. So that session that you already have is based on us taking what I found here and combining your lived experience to come to the fullest conclusions about everything, right? Because, like I said, it's the interplay of free will and the chart. But what most people do is they add the current astrology. Usually it's $380. I would do it for $260 for you. So you just have to let me know, and that it becomes one long session. It's not a long wait like this one was because it's not in a wait list format. It's done. It's just like my next available schedule, like you know, which is usually like a week or a few weeks, whatever. And yeah, we meet for first hour be follow up, and then hour two, hour three. Usually that's around how long it is. We go through all of the current astrology because there's always things that are happening with your transits. I do everything. Solar return right now. You have Pluto right on your sun. You've had it for a minute. So that's like a massive one. And that's probably why you've come to get this reading, because you're feeling this huge shift. You've been feeling it for a while now. And now it's gonna it's retrograding, it's retrograded back onto your sun, exact degree. And that's just one little thing I see. But also it's on your midheaven. So massive changes coming for you. So I think it'd be very important to, to see like what changes can come from there. Because also Pluto, you'll have your Pluto square soon, and then Pluto is going to be squaring Mars for you. Those are just like the transits I just see just by looking at this. There's also slow return. Most astrologers, they mix, they have like a lot of astrologers will have a different reading for progressions, for solar return, and they just try to make as much money as possible. A lot of them. Um, I just do it all in one. It's called current astrology / spiritual alignment. And yeah, just let me know. No pressure. You want to add both. So let's pull up the starry stars and asteroids. Let's see if there's any big ones. There usually is. Okay. So start with the ascendant. Saw a cat sprinting behind me. Okay. Wow. Beautiful. So you have white moon Selena conjunct your moon. So white moon Selena, the way I see it is that it is about spiritual protection and just like the highest the real potential for you to like really be at the highest potential of that Leo moon, and having lots of spiritual protection around that, around that kind of child, that inner child, that moon, that emotion. So that's a really nice one. Hey Mika, how are you? Give me a kiss, Mika. Mika, kiss. Mika, Mika, kiss. Good girl. Kiss. Yeah, Mika. Mika, Mika, Mika. Yeah, well, so far, none. Oh, what's this? Ooh, you have Eros conjunct your descendant. That's interesting. And then yeah, you have Serpent is kind of close. Thank God it's not close enough, but that can just create lots of like really destructive, um, like low vibes, like kind of like what Scorpio energy in relationships. But it's kind of like just far enough away, I think, to not. Yeah, it's like just out of orb. Um, but it can create lots of jealousy of people of own sex, and you know it can just, yeah, kind of create like very like tumultuous love life until it gets it's all about transmutation. And then having Eris. So Eris is interesting. um it's kind of actually, let me find one thing. Don't I have like a whole thing about this? Where are you? Oh, I have Eris. Where'd it go? Yeah, so yeah, it just gives like a real like kind of creative, like it can give one like a real creative outlet when it comes to like relating. like with like, and also like can represent like sexual, you know, lots of creativity when it comes to sexuality, even when if it's like taboo type stuff. That's another thing with Scorpio, is that it can be very like sexual taboos can be a big thing. Um, but also there can be like this very artistic kind of like collaboration between the partners. It's also very good for creativity, for like poetry, stuff like that. Um, so yeah, it just creates like very magical, unpredictable kind of love, you know? Um, and yeah, it's a nice one. It's also very, Eros, very erotic. So that can be like a theme in relationships. And just like very, very like irresistible attractive attractions, based on like the passions, sexuality and stuff. And what's it? That quar. So then that is going to give you like a lot of like um intuition of like, what um what like the perfect like you'll have like lots of intuition, and there's that need to listen to that intuition, because quar is about like creativity. So you might even like be attracted to like a very creative type person, but it means like psychic abilities are possible, um and kind of like the themes like personal transformation, healing, and like just like alchemy, within your relationships, and I see that as a big theme for you. And just like the need for you to trust your intuitive abilities. So it could even like speak to like a very like a relationship with like a spiritual type of relationship potentially. And when I mean that, I'm not saying it with a spiritual person. No. Yeah. But what it does like on the descendant is that it's almost like the universe can play like matchmaker, trying to set you up for like, you know, and like I said, there's so much karma in your love life, um, with these relationships that can really help you grow and blossom. But with Saturn there, like probably it's like, like lately that maybe it's been getting better. But sometimes people that have Saturn in the seventh house, like they can have some type of fear when things are going really well, because in the past they didn't. Um, so yeah. Okay. So Venus is close to the galactic center. So and Uranus is on the great attractor. So that's interesting. So yeah, you have like once again this like amazing ability to tap into like these super deep universal energies. The galactic center is like a black hole. So when you have like a planet like Venus conjunct it, you can just like you need to meditate. You need to like get into meditation. I'm telling you, like something that like really like opens, if not already, like your third eye, and I swear you'll just like meditate and just know shit. Be like, what? How did I know that? Okay, what's this? Fama. So Fama conjunct Mercury. That's interesting. Um, so that just speaks to like how through like your learning, through something related to your communication, whether it's writing, um, your mind in general, maybe some kind of inventiveness can literally bring you fame potentially, or just high success. Like staring at these, because all these asteroids are like so close. What's this? Is it Altair? Ooh, Altair midheaven, nice. And yeah, one other thing is you have to watch out for like with like the Taurus energy for um for being afraid to take the risks that you need to take in order um to be like stubborn, right? That's like, I'm not saying you are, I'm just saying that's like one potential, um to make sure that you're not allowing that to um to hold you back, right? Because there's always in life, there's like big, especially in your chart, there's like these big transformations that are needed. The last thing, Altair, that's a really strong one. You have it on your midheaven. Um, that's amazing for success. It's really great leadership. Um, and it's great for willpower and career and just achievement. Like it's someone who's just gonna get to where they need to get to, potential for fame and for recognition in what they're doing. And when you have your sun on the midheaven, like that's like as good as it gets for that, right? And one thing about sun in the midheaven too, I must say now that I think about it, with your sun in the midheaven, you're in your Leo in your moon in the fourth, that creates this real need to balance out your outer life with your inner life, your masculine with your feminine. Um, that's another part of this whole thing. Um, yeah. So people with this, like, they're just, yeah, they're just leaders, and good at managing too. That's another Capricorn thing, like good at managing people, good at being the responsible person who can also be the leader. So it's like someone who can be a worker or a high worker or like an entrepreneur. Um, and yeah, just not someone that you want to mess with. Very, very ambitious to have that on the midheaven. Um, Mika, what are you doing? Mika, what are you doing, Mika? Tell her with your Scorpio eyes what the truth is. You just want to kiss daddy, huh? Um, let's see if I can find some other thing with Altair. Yeah, so just very brave, and very ambitious, very motivational to people around it. And it's almost like another kind of like warrior energy. So yeah, it really promises rise in life and honors. Um, and someone who, yeah, just amazing willpower, who will just reach out and have like this incredible, just like going for it energy. So, all right, that is it. I think this is my longest one in a minute. Wow, 143. I've been keeping them way shorter, so you just had a lot to talk about. But thank you for your patience to let me know about the other reading. And yeah, thank you. Ciao, ciao, ciao.